Welcome to Season 2 of the SOAR podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the SOAR podcast. Today we have a fascinating guest with tons of information to drop for you, Liam Naden. Liam, go ahead and tell our listeners what it is you do.
Hi, Ray. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on your show. Well, basically, I'm a speaker, teacher, writer, researcher, and a coach, and I'm involved really in showing people the whole area of how to get better results than what they're getting in their life by understanding how to use their brain the right way. Because, as no doubt we'll talk about, the brain is actually the key to everything you get in your life, good and bad. And if you use it the right way, you're going to get a lot more good, more effectively. But it's not an area that many people seem to really focus on or be aware of or explain. So that's my mission, is to help people understand that and therefore be really more in control of their life and get what they want rather than what they don't want.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love that you said that, because the awareness piece, that's really the key, isn't it? Because so many people go through life thinking, oh, this situation makes me feel this way, or that person makes me feel this way. And they're really giving their power over to the external environment. Whereas if they're aware of the way they're thinking and the way that they're processing information, they kind of do that metacognition thing where they are thinking about their thinking, they can start to control and shape that in a direction that helps them bring about the reality that they want to experience.
Well, it actually goes a lot deeper than that, because, how I came onto this was I've spent many, many years studying all sorts of different techniques and methods for self-improvement, including spirituality, psychology, religion, and the whole area of, goal setting and change and using your mind in the right way and changing your beliefs and changing your thoughts. But it was only when I went through an experience in my mid-40s where after being a successful entrepreneur and businessman, where I lost everything. I became homeless. I had to move in with my elderly mother and sleep on her couch. It was only after that I started to approach things in a different way. And what I realized as I was putting my life back together in a much better way, and I wanted to figure out what I was doing differently, what I realized was no one's really told us about what our brain is. And the brain really is far and away the most powerful computer machine that exists in the universe. And there have been many books where people have described the power of the brain, but I think the basic problem for most people is, firstly, we don't realize just how powerful our brain is. It's literally infinite in its power. They did an experiment a few years ago where they got one of the largest supercomputers in the world. It was in Japan. It's called the Fujitsu K computer. And they got it to carry out a task that your brain can do in 1 second, one task. And it took this enormous computer, 40 minutes to complete that one task.
Wow.
So I think the first problem we all have is none of us realize just how enormously powerful our brain is.
Yeah.
The second thing we don't realize is that its sole function, what it's there to do, is to make sure you have the best life possible. Because your purpose for being here on a biological level is to be the best that you can be so that you have the greatest chance for survival. That's really the purpose of all biological life. And your brain has been given to you as the tool to make that happen, to make you the best you can be, physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And that means you're happiest. But the other thing that we don't realize is that despite its almost infinite power, the brain is actually a machine. It's a simple biological, well, not a simple, it's a complex, but it's a biological machine designed to get you to where you want to go, to be the best you can be, which means being your happiest and not with problems. But like virtually any other machine you can think of, no one's taught us how to use it. And this is crazy, because you wouldn't dream of getting in a motor car and trying to drive it if you didn't know how to drive it. you'd know what the purpose of a car is. Right, here's a machine that will take me from where I am to where I want to go. And the journey will be predictable, easy, enjoyable, very efficient and comfortable. But it's the machine that does the job. But well, before I get into a car to take me anywhere, I need to know how to drive it. And who of us has ever been taught how to drive the machine of our brain, how to use our brain the right way? And as a result, what happens is people have problems in their life. It's a bit like getting into a car and not knowing how to drive it. You're going to do all the wrong things. You're going to use the car the wrong way, and you are going to have problems. You're not going to have an enjoyable journey. You're going to struggle. You're probably not going to get anywhere. And if you do, it's going to be by luck rather than anything. So this is what really puzzled me for a long time, or excited me, if you like, and why I went down the track of understanding how the brain actually works and how it's designed to be used. Because like a car, you don't need to know all the wires and cables and everything about the engine and all the different parts, how they work. All you need to know is the basic design of what you need to do to use it to get you to where you want to go. So,
and how to maintain it.
Yeah, well, that's part of it.
Right, exactly. So there's so many things in there that you said that I want to unpack. The first was, you said that our brains have infinite potential. Now, I've done a lot of studying and self-development, self-improvement kind of work, spiritual exploration, all of these things. And still hearing you say that kind of blows my mind. The idea that our brains have infinite potential. Can you elaborate on that? What does that really mean?
Well, essentially, if you look at the power of the brain, one of the things it has is these things called neuron cells. And these are like the cells of intelligence. These are what enables all of this intelligence that works through you to be manifested in your life. It's the machinery of your brain. But there's 100 billion of these. 100 billion, that's more than there are stars in our galaxy. And each one of those 100 billion has a possible number of connections. It has more than 5,000 possible connections with other neuron cells. So you end up with a number of possible connections, possible things that your brain can do, or processes it can do. It's the number one followed by a million zeros. I mean, it's just an astronomical number.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, because I also went down the whole thing of studying all sorts of modalities, and I've been to seminars all around the world with many of the big names and the teachers, and I've studied a lot of these things. I used to have a huge library of books and courses, and before I lost it all as part of losing everything. But what puzzled me was, even though I'd done all those things, I still had problems in my life. I still had stress. And I began to think that stress and problems was a natural part of being successful. Because the more successful I was in business and personally, sure, I had more money, and I, on one level, more freedom to do what I wanted to do because of the money, and I had a nice home and nice cars and all those things. But I always had problems that showed up. And again, I come back to when I lost everything, and when I rebuilt my life in a different way, I was starting to do things I love to do in business, and a lot of coaching and helping others and building up my own businesses as well. But what I noticed was I didn't have the stress and problems that I'd had previously. And that's when I started to back engineer. And I thought, I've done all the courses, I've studied how to set goals and achieve goals and do all of these things. Well, firstly, if I knew all of that, how come I lost everything? That should never have happened.
Right.
And secondly, what I was able to do was really, if you like, see what was missing from all the things I'd been trying. And that's what led me onto the brain, to realize the brain it's just this missing link. It's this overlooked thing. We're all busy out there trying to search for answers outside of ourselves and get more information and get, new techniques, when it's a bit like saying, well, I've got a car. Oh, maybe I'll get some air conditioning put into it, or maybe I'll get some leather seats, or maybe I'll get a different steering wheel. Those are all, they might make it a little bit more helpful, a bit more comfortable, but if you're not using the car the right way, you're still not going to, it doesn't matter what you do and how fancy it is, you're still not going to get there. So, this is such an enormous area, although it actually comes down to something relatively simple, because we are designed to use our brain the right way. We're designed to do it in a way that we don't end up with problems in our life, because that's our biological purpose. That's why we're here. We're here to be strong and survive and thrive. And problems don't help us do that. They do the opposite. So
yeah, it's going back to that thing that you said about our purpose is to live our best life and in a way where we're happy. That's something that's very contrary to, especially what we're taught in Western culture, which is work hard, grind, get up early, do the miracle morning routine, whatever, work long days, work hard hours, and then only after years and years and years and years of work, you can retire, maybe if you're lucky, with a good retirement plan. What you're suggesting is very contrary to that. And it's really putting the quality of life first. And you're saying it's not about the hard work. It's not about the stress. It's not about the grinding. It's about what? Fill in that blank for me. How do we get both? How do we get the achievement and the happiness without the stress all at the same time? That sounds like the dream come true.
Okay. Well, one of the things, it all comes down to biology, because we can all disagree. If we want to ask the question, who are we and why are we here? We could come up with all sorts of different answers. But we can all agree on one thing, and that is we are biological. We're part of a biological species, and we have in common with every other biological species life. We exist as living creatures, and all science will tell you there is only one purpose of life, and that is to create more life. So your biological purpose is to ensure the survival of the species, to play your part in the survival of the species, and you do that by being the best that you can be. But here's the other thing we don't realize about our biology, and that is in every cell of your being, you have this stuff called DNA. And what DNA is, it's a string of molecules, if you like a strand, and it's a blueprint for who you are. Now, the thing about DNA, it's incredible stuff, because every strand in every cell, if you were to stretch it out, would be 4 feet long. And we've got 75 trillion cells in our body. So if you stretch out 4 feet by 75 trillion, you've got 50 billion miles of DNA in your body. This is further than from here to Mars. But what DNA is, it's got 200, each strand of DNA, each cell is a blueprint for you that contains more than 250 million pieces of information about you. You, nobody else, you, unique to you. So your brain is the machine designed to ensure that your DNA, which is the essence of who you are, the blueprint of who you are, carries on through the species. And what's the only way you can carry on and project your DNA is by being the best you can be, not comparing yourself to anybody else, but being the best that you can be. And the funny thing is, the best chance you have of doing that is not through stress, is not through pain. Science has another word for this. It's called homeostasis. And homeostasis means the perfect functioning of the organism. And in your case, in our human case, like every life form, it's when all your organs are performing to their peak. It's when you're breathing, your heart rate, all your organs are doing their job perfectly. And it's when you are mentally, spiritually, and emotionally your best as well. Because what happens when you feel good, when you feel happy, when you feel at your best? You're creative, you have imagination, you're resourceful, you're motivated to do things. You make the right decisions about things. You have gut feelings about what to do and what not to do, and you do it. So all of these things are what helps the human race, helps your survival, and helps the survival of the human race. So that means these are things only really happen when you're happy, when you're at your best. It's sometimes called being in the zone or in the flow. You're not at your best when you're stressed. I used to be, in business, I used to make terrible decisions when I was stressed.
Yeah.
And I spent so much time cleaning up messes for things I should never have decided to do in the first place, whether it was set up a new business or employ somebody new that I knew that probably was the wrong person, or do a deal with somebody that wasn't right. And I think that's the problem with so many people, particularly when you're living an entrepreneurial life. You don't have anyone else telling you what to do. You have to make so many decisions all the time. So what's your roadmap? Well, the problem is, it used to be for me, and it is for many people, the roadmap is based on fear, that you're worried about not being enough, not getting enough, not making the right decision, and particularly not being as successful as you can be. And that's what drives people to, when they base it on stress and fear, base their decision-making on stress and fear, that's what drives them to make the wrong decision. And it's all because of what happens in your brain. When you feel stress, fear, worry, anxiety, you do something to your brain that stops it operating the right way. And it literally blocks it from bringing out the best in you, bringing out your DNA, getting you to live your biological purpose, and operating in a way that can show you and enable you to live the best life possible. And this is what happened to me after I lost everything and I changed the way my brain worked, is much better things came to me. I made much better decisions. I came up with better ideas. And not only that, the right people showed up in my life, the right opportunities showed up, and I was able to recognize those and act on them. And as I say, it was only then that I realized that the only difference, it wasn't that I was setting goals, it wasn't that I was trying any fancy techniques or using any of my earlier ideas. I wasn't living out of stress and fear and worry, and that unlocked this part of my brain that made things happen in a much better way. And that's what we're here to do. Life's supposed to be an adventure, not a painful struggle.
Right.
It doesn't make sense biologically.
Exactly. And it's getting out of survival mode. It's the whole feed and breed versus fight or flight. If we spend our entire lives in fight or flight, we never have the chance to do the feed and breed. That's how we're biologically programmed. So this all makes sense in theory. We're going to take a super short break. We're going to come back, and I want to ask you about the practical tools, that how do we apply all this in our daily lives to actually make the changes that we want to see. So we'll be right back. Hey, Ray here. Let's talk money. Money is universal. It's the conduit for exchanging energy between people and business entities, which are really just more people. It's how we build the lives we want, and it's how we can make an impact for the better. As a good friend of mine likes to say, good money in the hands of good people can do good things. And if you don't have a healthy relationship with money, you're inevitably going to run into trouble. Whether you're struggling with your pricing, or you're not sure where the money you work so hard for is vanishing off to, or you just want to have an easier time of attracting in money like a magnet, you will find everything you need to transform your money mindset and manifest the wealth you want inside of my course, Money Mindset Mastery. Plus, as an added bonus, you'll also get access to my most popular barrier-busting workshop, Price Yourself Perfectly. Learn more at chironconsulting.us/money mindset. That's all one word, money mindset. Go to chironconsulting.us/money mindset. All right, we are back with Liam Naden. Liam, we're talking about this idea of the biology, our core innate purpose in life, and how that relates to eliminating stress from business, from relationships, from all aspects of life. You've given us this great framework to get into the headspace with you. Now, how do we take these principles and apply them in our daily lives? Tell me how you did this for yourself when you went from losing everything, moving in with your mother, living on her couch. What did you actually do to transform your life by applying these theoretical principles into the practical?
I'll tell you exactly what I did. I didn't realize it at the time, but to explain it, can I just give you a 25-second quick overview of how the brain does this? And then it will make sense as to what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially you have 4 parts of your brain, and I mentioned before the break that your purpose is actually to be really happy. Your purpose is not to have problems. Your purpose is to be biologically the best that you can be, which means the happiest. And you've been given a brain to enable that to happen. Your brain is a machine that is designed to be used in a certain way that when you do use it that way, you are the best that you can be. Because it's, as I say, it's an infinite machine. It can make you the best you can be because it is virtually infinite in its power. So the way to do that is to realize there are 4 parts to the brain, and I won't go into too much detail, but essentially we have 2 emotional, mental, or nervous system states. And the part of our brain that operates or drives our be the best that we can be which is when we feel in the zone, in the flow, and when we're being creative and resourceful and not having problems and doing all the right things. It's a part of the brain called the creative, what I call the creative part of the brain. So the 4 parts of the brain, there's the thinking part, the feeling part, the emotional part, the mechanical part or the survival part, but there's also the creative part of the brain. And this is the part of the brain, it's located in a couple of little places. It's been relatively recent research to discover that this is all true. But this is where you get your aha moments, your intuition, inspiration, creativity. It's where musicians and artists say, I just heard the music, I don't know where it came from, and then I just wrote it down, or I just wrote the words on the page and I don't know where it came from. So this is not from your thoughts, and it's not from your feelings. It's from somewhere else. You get this inspiration. It's when you look at somebody and you go, I'm going to marry you. Or you walk into a house and you go, I'm going to buy this house. You know, and you just know that it feels right. So this is called the creative part of your brain, and this is what's supposed to be activated all of the time. But there's only one time when that's not supposed to be activated, and when it's not supposed to be driving your life, so that you're just enjoying the journey. And you're putting in the effort, of course you are, but you're putting in the right effort. You're making the right decisions. You're not spending all your time trying to fix mistakes, because your creative brain is leading you to the right decisions. And you make the right, you can see them, you make the right decisions. There's only one time you're not supposed to be like that, when you're not supposed to feel really good and excited and in the flow. And that is when some immediate threat or danger threatens your survival. So, you know, prehistoric times, it's when the lion runs out of the forest roaring at you.
Right.
Now, what happens to your brain in that moment, and this is beautifully designed, your brain, the machinery brain is beautifully designed to do this. What happens is your emotional brain actually switches gear and says, you are faced with an immediate danger to your survival. It sends a signal in the form of neurotransmitters or feelings, chemicals that make you feel fear. And fear is the signal to the rest of your brain and the rest of your body that you are facing an immediate threat to your survival. And what it does is it activates something called the sympathetic nervous system, and it puts all of your focus, all of your attention to getting rid of that danger. It's absolutely perfect when you're facing an immediate danger. But what happens when you live like this all the time? Because what you're actually blocking off by feeling fear, when you feel fear, worry, anxiety, stress, your brain is saying you're facing an immediate danger. And most of the time you're not. But somehow your brain is interpreting things in the wrong way. But the problem is it shuts off all of the part of your brain that can actually solve the problem. All your creative part, your resources, your imagination, your big awareness, your big picture thinking, the synchronicities, the right people coming to you, all that's blocked off. You can't, so it's just not operating. And this is why we have problems. This is why we make the wrong decisions and make mistakes. We've shut off the access to the part of our brain that can actually bring us all the solution to all our problems.
So how do we turn that back on?
There's only one way to do it, and the Bible says it. The Bible is I was brought up a Christian. I'm no longer a practicing Christian, but many people are. And I can say to Christians out there, you've got the best success manual for how to use your brain the right way that exists. Because what does it say in the Bible more than 360 times? Be not afraid. Have no fear. Have faith. And it doesn't just say that because it's a nice idea. What it's saying to you is, when you feel fear, you are not in your natural creative state. You are not allowing your brain to bring you all that you need to be the best that you can be, because you're tricking your brain to thinking that it's got to deal with an immediate problem. So the enemy The only thing you need to do, if you want to live your ideal life, is to get your brain to operate the right way and not feel fear unless it really is essential, unless you're threatened by your survival, because that's the purpose of that part of your brain, and that's using your brain the right way. So all I do in apart from my research and helping people understand this, because when people understand this, they realize they've got to be really careful about what they allow into their brain.
Yeah.
If it makes you feel bad, you're finished. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did when I changed how I operated, because when I lost everything, and the difference was I went from trying to fix everything, trying to control everything, having goals, trying to be determined and trying to work things out. I suddenly went, I don't know the answers. I don't know what to do. I give up. I literally give up, and I don't care anymore. And what I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, I was just letting go of my fear and saying, whatever happens, happens. In my case, I was at rock bottom and I just had to give up. And what I did then, without realizing it, I was able to activate my creative brain, and it brought me much better things. And this is what I've back engineered to understand. And now what I really spend a lot of my time doing is helping people and I've developed a process called Neuro-State Rebalancing, which what that literally does is it gets your brain to see the difference between something that's a real threat and something that's an imaginary threat. And the stock market going down, or your wife coming and telling you she wants a divorce,
Right.
or you losing half your business, or you looking at the threat of losing half your business. These are all imaginary. You've convinced yourself that these are dangers to you. They're not dangers to your survival at all. It's just through the way the input you've put into your brain since we were born. The brain thinks on a biological level. It's interpreting these as real threats. So what Neuro-State Rebalancing does, it helps people see that those aren't threats at all. And when you can see that, when you can see the big picture about yourself, then you make the right decisions. And it might be for your business, get rid of that staff member who's not performing. Get rid of that part of your business that you're spending 80% of your time working on that isn't working, and you're struggling. Get rid of your fear of not having enough. Get rid of saying, well, if I don't reach this goal of making this amount of money this year, then I'm going to be a failure. Get rid of all of that stuff. It's not helping you. And allow your brain to bring to you all of the magic, all of the stuff that really will make you happy.
Yeah.
Because here's the funny thing, you don't know what's going to make you happy. You think you do, and people sit down and try and use their thinking brain, which is not designed for this at all. They try and use that to figure out how their life should be and how they can be happy. But you don't know. But your creative brain, which knows all of these 250 million pieces of information about you and what you need to be really happy and to be your best so that you survive and thrive, it knows that. So you've got to surrender control from your fear-based thinking brain and survival brain. You've got to release control to your creative brain. And when you do, it's a wonderful journey. Life becomes a wonderful journey, which is what it's supposed to be.
Well, and this is a beautiful message. And I think this is something that people really need to hear and process and hear again and process again. It's one of those things that takes a while to sink in, because it's one of those easier said than done sort of situations where, in your situation, as you said, you were pretty much at rock bottom. You had nothing left to lose. And so in a sense, it was almost easier for you to say, I don't care anymore. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not afraid of anything else, because all the things that you were afraid of had already happened to you. So what is your advice for someone who is not yet in that state, and hopefully never has to get to that point, where they do have things to lose? They have a business, they have a home, they have a mortgage, they have a family, they have their health, and they are afraid of losing one or more of those things. And they have gotten themselves stuck in this rut of thinking, the fear keeps me sharp. The fear is what keeps me on my toes and allows me to keep operating at this level. Now, theoretically, we know that's not true, but when you're in that moment, it's a lot easier to say, oh, just get rid of fear, let go of the fear thoughts, they're not serving you. How do you actually do it?
Well, there's three things, and actually I've got a whole coaching program which I break down into three parts, which is to do these. First thing you need to do is understand how your brain works, because it's a little bit like with a car. It doesn't matter. You could say, well, I'm really stressed and I'm determined to get this thing working. It doesn't matter how determined you are, how motivated you are. If you don't and how much effort you're willing to put in, if you don't operate it the right way, you're just not going to get decent results. So you need to understand how it works, and that is the truth of it. And the good thing is, when you do understand how it works and you start to understand how it works, you think, I wouldn't use it any other way. So that's the first level. That's the first thing you need to do. So I really encourage people, and I've got a podcast where I teach this, and I've got a whole coaching program where I teach this. But you've got to understand how your brain works. Imagine sitting in front of a computer for hours on end, and it's just not giving you the result you want. And you're just getting more and more frustrated and more determined, and you're living on coffee and alcohol, and you're frantically trying to get this computer.
Guilty.
Wouldn't it be simpler if someone told you how to use it in the first place? If you knew how to use it, you need to stop that cycle of thinking that force and pushing and getting and struggle, and somehow there's a virtue in all of that. There's no virtue in struggle. It just messes things up. So that's the first thing. The second thing you need to do, once you realize that your brain operates perfectly when it's not driven by fear, and that fear is really the enemy, what you have to do is really become aware of what you're putting into your brain that's creating the fear. And you're going to say, I've got to do what I can to avoid it. Because every time I do, if something goes into my brain and it makes me feel bad, I'm finished. I cut off my creative brain, and I cut off all my ability and resources to solve my problems and create my ideal life. This is we all know that if you put something into your physical body and it's not right for you, it's going to damage you. And if someone gave you a glass of hydrochloric acid and said, drink this and I'll give you $1 million, doesn't matter if they give you $10 million, it's going to damage you. So there's no way you'd drink that glass of acid.
Right.
So but there's a mental nutrition or toxicity or stuff we put in. If you realize the effect it has on you and what it's doing for your life and your results, there's no way you're going to put negative stuff in. So that means turning off anything negative anything that makes you feel bad. You've got to find a way to really say, this is toxic to me. I've got to avoid it.
Yeah.
And people say, we've got to be realistic. That's very different to being realistic. If you want to be realistic, see the beauty in the world, see the perfection in the world, and you will see that from a different perspective when you're not in fear and when you're using your brain the right way. You'll see things in a far better way. You'll see how amazing this world actually is. So that's the second thing. You have to really control what you put in. So that, as I say, avoid things that make you feel bad. It might be ending conversations with people that don't make you feel good. It might be avoiding people who don't make you feel good. And even with your business, as I've found, it's better to let go of something, even if it's a relationship. I do a lot of marriage and relationship coaching as well, so I help people with this. You're better to let go of a toxic relationship than carry on with something and struggling where it's not making you feel good. Now, that doesn't mean just give up for the sake of it, but you've really got to evaluate, is this doing me any good? Is this conversation with this person? Is this watching this news program? Is this reading this stuff? Is it making me feel good or not? If it's making you feel bad, you've got to try and cut it out of your life, because it's like the hydrochloric acid.
Yep.
And the third thing you have to do and in my coaching program, I show people there's a lot of things people aren't aware of that are making them feel bad.
Yeah.
So I sort of help them discover that. The third thing is, once you're doing that, that'll take you up a long way. The next level is you've got to deal with what's already in there. And you've got to start retraining your brain that all of these things that it's had wired in to say, this is a danger. So you see something on TV and it's like, oh, World War III is going to happen and I'm going to die. That's what you've been feeding your brain. You've got to find a way that whatever is in there, you've got to get your brain, retrain your brain to see the difference between an imaginary threat and a real threat. And they're the three things you have to do. And can I just say one interesting thing? People say, well, give me a quick fix. In my marriage and relationship coaching, people come to me because their husband or their wife has told them they want a divorce. Everyone wants a quick fix. But what is a quick fix? It's a function of you being in a fear state, because your sympathetic nervous system, your brain, when it's operating like that, when it's operating in a reactive state from a very limited awareness, it's looking for quick fixes. It's looking for things that make you feel instantly a little bit better, but they're never the right solution. So you're never going to fix your life with quick fixes. I really learned this. And, a good example is in a relationship when people say to me, oh, we don't get on so well and we're arguing all the time. And I say, why do you argue? They say, I don't know why we argue. We end up shouting at each other. And I say things, I don't mean to say them. What's going on there? You don't want to say those things, but because you're in this anxious, stressed state, your brain is reacting. And it's saying, what's the quickest way to make you feel better? In other words, to get you out of an immediate danger. Well, the quickest way to make you feel better in an argument is to shout back at the other person. That makes you feel better for an instant. Yeah, does nothing for very briefly, does nothing for the problem. In fact, because that part of your brain doesn't see consequences. It doesn't see, what the big picture, it just reacts. And this is part of the problem why people make wrong decisions, is their brain isn't allowing them to see the true consequences of that decision. So everyone wants quick fixes, but realize that quick fixes are just a need that your fear-based part of your brain wants, and it's not going to be the solution. So you really need to dig down, and you need to find out how your brain works, how to stop the things that are stopping it from working coming into you, and how to stop the things that are stopping it from working that are already in there, how to change that. And it's a lot easier than just going from one idea to the next, which is what I used to do. Yeah. Maybe this technique, maybe this idea, maybe this book, maybe this seminar, maybe this will help me get a better idea. And that's all, if it's based on fear, it's not going to work for you. It's not allowing your brain's infinite capacity to do what it wants to do for you, what it's supposed to do, what it's designed to do.
And ultimately it comes down to a decision, right? It's instead of looking outside of yourself to all the gurus and the books and the social media and the videos and the courses and the things, instead of looking outside of you thinking, oh, I have to find just the right thing in order to survive this crazy world and be successful. Really what you're saying is, no, it's all inside you. You just have to be more careful about what you're putting into your brain, what's going on in your brain, and deliberately deciding that you are no longer going to live in fear.
Exactly. Yeah. The Bible, again, puts it well when it says, seek first the kingdom of heaven and everything else will be added. Mm-hmm. And the kingdom of heaven is within you. Yeah. Yeah. It's all there. Exactly. And if you focus on using the kingdom of heaven the right way, it's going to be replicated in your outer world and in everything else, because that really is how it works. Yeah, and we just need help unlocking that and figuring out how to get there, which is exactly what you do. So tell our listeners, where can they check you out? If they want to learn more, read about you, listen to your podcast, where can they check you out? And we will put all of those links in the show notes. Thanks. Well, the easiest place is just my website, which is liamnaden.com, just my name. And I've got my podcast. I've got a podcast there called Using Your Brain for Success. Mm-hmm. And I go into a lot more detail, not in a super technical way, but to explain how your brain works, why you're here, what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to be operating. And, I think that really is the first step, and the most important step that I'm trying to do is educate people, help people understand this, because we should be taught this stuff in schools. We should go to school, and all they need to say to you is, just make sure you use your brain the right way so that you don't feel fear, except when something bad is about to happen to you immediately. Be careful what you put in your mind so that you don't add any negativity, and your life's going to turn out perfectly. Again, in the Bible, it said, give no thought for tomorrow. Do not be anxious for tomorrow. Tomorrow will look after itself. And do not worry what you will eat, drink, or what you will wear. It'll all be provided for you through this. Yeah. Yeah. If we can only let go of the fear. Thank you so much. That comes through understanding. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And that self-awareness. Thank you so much for being here, Liam. This is fantastic. Thank you, Ray. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.